Let's look at the 10 reasons why it is such a good idea to install the Mazda 6 cruise control system on your NA or NB Miata MX-5 or Yunus Roadster. Number 1. Parts availability and costs. The availability of the original cruise control parts for the NA and NB generation is fairly limited in North America. Prices are increasing. Parts availability in other regions is basically non-existent because the cars were never produced with cruise control for those regions. In contrast to that, we see the Mazda 6 in its first generation. It was standard equipped with cruise control. A lot of those cars are currently reaching end of life, so availability of those parts is high at local junkyards. The benefit of the cruise control system in the first generation Mazda 6 is that it still used an actuator cable, an actual cable that goes to the throttle body. This makes it compatible with the system used on the NA and NB generation. In later versions, Mazda moved to an electronic throttle body, and then the ECU is in control of the cruise control system. Number 2 is reliability. The original system was developed in the 80s, so the vacuum operated actuator was already used in the B2200, B2600 pickup trucks and on the MPV in 1989. So the core of the solution, the cruise control module from the NA, is currently between 25 and 35 years old, and they are not sealed, so humidity and moist can have an influence on their working. They tend to fail on leaking capacitors, etc. And in comparison, the Mazda 6 solution came to the market in 2002, so it is developed at least a decade later, and it is a sealed unit. So this will contribute to its reliability over time. So if you have to invest in parts, better to invest in slightly younger parts. Reason number 3 is compatibility with a boosted engine. The original system uses a vacuum from the engine in the same way the brake booster does. For the Mazda 6 it's different because it does not require vacuum from the engine. The system is electronic, which means you can use this system on an engine that is equipped with a supercharger or a turbo. Reason number 4 is compatibility with right-hand driven cars. The NA and NB MX-5 and Yunus Roadster for the UK, Japan and Australia were never produced with cruise control. It was not an option. This system of the Mazda 6, however, can be used on those cars because basically if you can find a place for the unit, the actuator unit, in the engine bay and a path for the actuator cable to reach the throttle body, then you should be good to go. The rest of the installation is about the wiring, and that process is basically the same as for the left-hand driven cars. Reason number 5 is that there are various options to operate the system. The original system uses a main switch and then 2 switches on the wiper cruise stalk behind the steering wheel. On the Mazda 6, however, there are buttons on the steering wheel. This is not an option for the NA version because it doesn't have a clock spring that could host additional wires, but in that case you could place switches on the steering column covers. For the NB generation, however, there are multiple options. You could decide to go for the Mazda 6 steering wheel, or the steering wheel from the MX-5 and C generation, or the CX-7, or the RX-8, or for cruise control buttons from the Mazda Protégé, or if you want, then also the construction with that wiper cruise lever, the switches on the lever, are also still an option. Reason number 6, ease of installation. Retrofitting the original system on an NA or NB generation car is not an easy task. I've done this many times, and even if I have all of the wiring prepared, it still takes me about a day. The gas pedal mechanism has to be replaced because you now also need the actuator cable to be hosted to control the throttle in combination with the gas pedal. The combination switch needs to be replaced or partly replaced because you need the wiper cruise lever instead of the standard wiper lever. And then if it's not a North American car and the wiring is missing, then all of the wiring needs to be done, and it ends up at a very inconvenient place on the left kick panel under the dashboard. In comparison, the Mazda 6 system is a combined actuator and cruise control module in one. It lives in the engine bay with a cable that goes to the throttle valve, and all of the wiring goes through the firewall and can be prefabricated. Reason number 7, a smoother operation. The Mazda 6 system does not use vacuum from the engine, but instead it uses electronics and the motor to control the tension on the cable. This makes it easier to manage that tension, and as a result, the operation is smoother. The system can already be engaged at 30 kilometers per hour instead of at 40 kilometers per hour or 25 miles per hour for the original system. Reason number 8, the cancel function. On the original system, cruise control operation is paused when you use the clutch pedal or the brake pedal. On the Mazda 6 system, this functionality is also supported in the same way, but on top of that you also have the option to pause operation using the cancel switch on the steering wheel. This way of pausing the system is more convenient because you don't need to use the clutch or brake pedal to pause the system. Reason number 9, changing the set speed. On the original system, you use the switches on the wiper cruise lever to accelerate or coast and therefore change the set speed. So you need to hold that switch, and if you release it again, then you have the new set speed. On the Mazda 6 steering wheel, you have those buttons as well. So when you press and hold the button, then it will accelerate or decelerate until you let go of the switch. But you can also incrementally increase or decrease the speed just by providing pulses. Every pulse on that button will make a difference of 1 mile per hour or 1.6 kilometers per hour. So it's more convenient to adjust the set speed. Reason number 10, audio controls. Last but not least is the option to combine this modification with the implementation of audio controls on the steering wheel. The stock radio in the MB2 and most of the modern aftermarket head units support this functionality. So when you use the Mazda 6 steering wheel, or that from the Mazda MX-5 NC generation, or CX-7 or the RX-8, then it would be a shame not to convert this option and start using the audio controls from the steering wheel. I hope you found this video helpful and entertaining. Pressing the like button helps the algorithm, and subscribing to the channel is highly appreciated. There are many videos on this topic that will explain to you how you can do this modification, so please check those out as well. For now, I would like to thank you for watching MX5 Info, and I hope you will come back for more content like this in the near future.